What's good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. I'm going to talk about what the technicals are suggesting, what you should be watching for. But before I do anything like that, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner. Take none of this as financial advice. And don't forget about the Moomoo link. The offer ends very soon. Deposit $100 and you're guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $100 cash reward. This offer ends in 4 days. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, you can see there's quite clearly this head and shoulders like formation, and this is when you exclude the extended hours. I'm just doing this to show you the gap right over here. So basically, Tesla's holding support, which formed right after, it gapped up and came down before pumping up. And the support's at 242. That's where Tesla's trying to base. But if Tesla breaks below 242, it's going to likely start to fill most, if not this entire gap, and make its way all the way down to the high to mid 230s after that. Now, I also want to note that if Tesla were to try to bounce from here, which I don't really see on the chart just yet, it has resistance around 245 and then also 247. That was the previous support that was holding up Tesla where the neckline was for the head and shoulders. And if 247, if it gets above that, then it has potential to make its way up to 250 again, then potentially 256 if that breaks. But like I said before, it's not looking that great for Tesla. It is trying to base at 242, but no guarantee it's going to hold because on the 4-hour time frame, it's still looking a lot more bearish, and it's continuing to look weak as time goes on. But the real question is, how will the market end up impacting Tesla, and what level should you be watching for specifically? Well, I went over both the bullish and bearish cases. I just want to note that it's looking a little bit more bearish, and there's a good chance it's going to retest 242. If it gets a clean break below this, I don't know if it's going to happen today or later on. It has more potential to drop even more. So just be very careful. Please remain calm, cool, and collected. I know this is very tricky for a lot of people. And I do want to inform you guys that yes, Tesla could sink. It's been getting a lot of downgrades from many analysts, but there's also potential for Tesla to bounce later on. I don't know if it's going to try to bounce off 242. I don't really know if that's going to be the bottom or not. I think it's unlikely. It's more likely it's going to drop lower. But somewhere between here and maybe the bottom of the gap, between here and like the 235 area, there's a good chance Tesla's going to try to base. Now, could it go a little lower if we get bad news? Sure, it can. But the reason why I'm trying to talk about a base for a potential bounce later on is because we are approaching deliveries for Tesla. And I think, yes, Tesla could drop more. It's going to likely continue to drop, but it's going to likely bounce by the time we approach Friday. I would say by Thursday or Friday, we should see a very nice bounce on Tesla. And that's what typically happens before deliveries, right? The last time we had deliveries that happened, the penultimate time it happened as well. And this also sometimes happens before earnings. I think there's going to be a lot of optimism approaching it. So I'm looking for a potential bounce to come on Tesla later on. It could drop more. Yes, it could easily drop more. It has more potential downside looking at the 4-hour time frame. Could come all the way back down to the 230s, sure. But there could be a bounce coming. I'm going to be watching for that later on. I just wanted to let you guys know about that. As we approach the end of the week, it could happen, okay? Now, when it comes to the other tickers out there, if you look at SPY, this is looking bearish on the 4-hour time frame. This is continuing to sink, but 432 is acting as support right now. There was a fake out of break below it, but it ended up just trying to make its way back up. It is still looking more bearish. And don't forget, we have Jerome Powell speaking on Wednesday. So what I'm seeing for this is if it tries to bounce, hypothetically, you're going to be watching the 433 area, 432.8 to about 433 as resistance, then 434, 435.06 also as resistances, because that was the previous high it made on Friday. And if it gets above the 435 area, it has the potential to push all the way up to fill the gap. But for now, right, we're not seeing any bounce like that, so we have to be careful. If it breaks down, you're going to be watching this 429 to 430 area as major support. Lots of bulls are going to try to defend this area. Now, the reason why this is important is because at 430, okay, we could get some false breaks down here. So you're going to be watching the candlesticks. Are we going to see a lot of wicks, or are we about to see this thing just continue to look weak and break below it? If it breaks below 430 to 429, the entire zone, it's going to sink hard all the way down to the mid 420s, if not the low 420s pretty quickly. So watch that very carefully. Make sure you're ready and you watch these support and resistance levels. Right now, it's looking weak on the 4-hour time frame. There's a good chance it's going to make its way down closer to 430 very soon. So please be very careful and be mindful of support and resistance and many, many fake outs that tend to happen. AMD is continuing to sink. It's trading sideways right now, trying to base, but it actually broke below 108 temporarily. If it continues to break down, I could see it get all the way down to 105. If it tries to push up, it has resistance at about 110. Still looking weak, but very choppy, so not a whole lot's going on with it. For the QQQ, this thing has a gap I was looking at. Let me double check where the gap was. It's getting very close to it. In the mid 350s, I saw a gap. I think it might be on its way to approach that gap, assuming it has not been filled yet. Let me just double check just to be safe. So like around here, you could argue we haven't fully filled this gap. Yeah, we haven't fully filled it in my opinion. We came close, but not fully. And you could see, it's very, very close, but it did not fully fill it around the 355 area. So we could see the QQQ sink a little bit more, get closer to that level. There's also this like gap that formed at like 353, but there's this wick here. So this is up to debate whether or not you consider this filled. Many could argue not, but I don't really want to solely trade based off that. If anything, let's just look at the trend. 353 also happens to be where the 50 EMA is. 355 is going to be the next major support if it breaks below 358. But the current trend is more bearish on the 4-hour time frame without the extended hours, and with them, it's no different. Still looking more bearish, still looking kind of weak. I'm going to be watching 357.5 to potentially 355 for the potential gap fill, then 353 would come afterwards. But for the time being, watch these levels carefully. If it tries to bounce, you're going to be watching this 360 to potentially 361.95. Then after that comes 365 as resistance. And when it gets above that, we have potential to fill the gap at 366. So watch those resistance levels and watch support very carefully. It is looking more bearish as of right now, but it's trying to base at 358. But like I said, there's no guarantee it's going to hold. Looking at the current trend, just be very careful. We will see what happens moving forward and do what you have to do on that. Finally, the dollar is a little bit red, which is very ironic. It just shows the level of manipulation in this market. Aapl turned a little red. It's starting to sink downwards. Now that Aapl broke below 186, we could see Aapl retest 185 very, very soon. However, Aapl is still, holding up compared to the market. It hasn't really dropped too much. Very, very minor amounts of dropping have happened. For Nvda, I warned you that if this thing broke below the 50, it's going to come down pretty hard. And it broke below the 50. Look at where Nvda is. It came down. Now, Nvda could make an attempt to base around this 400 area, but that's going to depend a lot on the market. The market continues to slide. If we see SPY break those important supports, if we see the Nasdaq continue to slide, this thing could make its way down a lot lower into like the 395 to 390 area. Could drop lower, but for now, we're not seeing it breaking below 400. So we're not going to assume that's going to happen just yet. Let's see how it reacts to 400 if it does get a back test. And if it tries to push, because it did get a bounce off 401, if it tries to push up later on, it has resistance at about 411. Then after that comes 417. On the 1-hour time frame, however, this is still looking a little bit more bearish to me. It just hasn't really gotten a nice bounce. I think there's a catalyst coming out later on, so it could happen. We will see if Nvda does get that bounce. For now, we're just going to read the trend and be very patient with this. Last but not least, when it comes to Meta, Meta is trying to hold the 200 EMA in the 1-hour time frame. I think on the 2-hour time frame, it tends to actually hold up around where the 50 is. It actually broke below the 50, which is a bearish signal, but that's been dropping a lot recently. So I'm going to be looking for a potential bounce for it to backtest. This is like 50 at 282, and if it fails to hold that, it could get a rejection and continue to sink with the markets. 276 is going to be the next major support zone, this entire zone, and if that fails us, it has potential to come all the way down to 270 again, to 269, which is where our 200 EMA happens to be. But for now, it's trying to hold around 277.6. Could it bounce and try to get a back test? It is very possible. I don't think Meta is a weak stock whatsoever. It's been uptrending like crazy for the past few months. I told you guys that we had major resistance at 290 as well. I mean, if we broke 290 and held it, that would be very bullish. We failed to do so. So got the rejection, and it's just a matter of time to see which way it goes if it does like continue to backtest. But anyways, the market is now continuing to slow down. We're going to be patient. Don't forget we have Jerome Powell speaking on Wednesday and also parts of Thursday, depending on where you are in the world. For the East Coast, it's going to be very early in the morning for Thursday too. So Wednesday and Thursday, we have potentially Jerome Powell speaking. And then After that, for Friday, we have PCE coming out, which is going to affect the markets big time. So we're going to watch these levels, watch support and resistance, everyone. I will see you guys later on for the final video of the day. And please stay strong. I thank you all for listening. Have a great day. The market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright. And peace